been such a busy week. I'm not even sure where to start. I feel like children's safety has just been completely compromised. I feel like women and girls' rights and protections have been completely undermined. And I just wanted to start with a story from a mother here in Utah. Utah is one of the more conservative states in the nation. And yesterday, her daughter came home from school and said that a boy came into their bathroom and was completely emboldened to do so because of the executive order that our new president issued, which basically said that anybody can identify as whatever gender that they want. And when they identify as a woman, they are to be treated as if they actually are women. And if they identify as man, vice versa. And so here we have our very first known case of a high school boy going into a girl's bathroom just because now he can. The girl noted that this boy was not dressed up, it was not gender non-conforming. He just wanted access to the women's bathroom. And I have a feeling this is just one among many cases that we're going to be hearing about. And I just want to know how many girls and women have to be sacrificed to predators before we're going to stop this nonsense.
Well, in my district last year, I was talking at a school board meeting during a break to a really prominent trans rights activist in our area here. He's a high school teacher and he's big in the equality and trans activism movement. And I told him, I said, the problem is not trans people using the bathroom, it's guys who will take that opportunity, guys who have nefarious intentions, who will use that opportunity because there's no standards. There's no standards for who gets to call himself a woman. And this guy told me, he's like, no high school boy would ever pretend to be trans in order to use the bathroom. And I was like, have you met any high school boys? Are you seriously a high school teacher? Because I know a lot of them who will do it just for fun.
Not
or
to mention predators. There are predators out there and they will use whatever advantage they have to get what they want, which is to violate women and girls.
We're not that stupid to think that, oh no, nobody will ever do this.
And what's amazing to me now is that based on the interpretation of this executive order, men now who claim to be women will be allowed into girls' bathrooms, will be allowed to chaperone girls on overnight trips. And there's nothing that the parents, the teachers, or the girl themselves is allowed to do now without being called discriminatory.
Yeah,
And
can a man stay in a girl's hotel room overnight? Like it's a school trip. The choir's going on a school trip and they're putting 3 students and a teacher in each hotel room. Can a man stay in the hotel room with 3 girls?
if he says he's a woman, he can.
Is there any standard for that? Does he need
No.
to?
Nope, there's no standard. And that's one of the things that's concerning, that we, there are men who have gone through operations to have their genitalia removed. And the assumption is, well, they're safe. They've had their genitals removed. So they at least should be allowed into women's bathrooms. But as we know, historically, rape is not a sexual crime. And there have been cases where rapists have been castrated in the past and they go ahead and rape with objects. So just having genitalia removed doesn't necessarily mean that that a male is going to be safe among women and girls, that they're not going to be safe around us when we're in vulnerable spaces. And so it's just confounding to me that we are accepting the proposition that just by saying you're a woman, you become a woman. And the new administration not only issued this executive order, but then also selected a man who claims to be a woman as his assistant secretary of health, which is, of all things, health. Okay, so we have a man now who is mentally ill or is a predator, one of the other. He either cannot accept himself for who he is, or he's actively doing this to be a predator. Yeah. Who is now our assistant health secretary, and has already started issuing proclamations about how great puberty blockers are. So he is hurting kids. Like, he's right from the get-go, he's hurting kids because we know how damaging puberty blockers are.
Well, it's completely ridiculous as well that the person who is going to be an authority on health is on lifelong dangerous cross-sex hormones. And it's exactly the same as somebody, he was tasked with going to be tackling the opioid health crisis. It's exactly the same as him rocking up saying, I mean, I take heroin sometimes and it's okay and whatever. So he's living a dangerous life, you know, obviously on cross-sex hormones, and that may be a private thing, okay? That would have been okay, but public office and health public office, and also he's living, you know, he's living. He's doing live action role play, okay, constantly, all the time. Every time he gets up and talk, it's live action role play. Everybody's calling him Miss and Rachel and this and that. And with the latest laws, which have been um, passed, or you know, the executive order, I'm not even sure if we can call him anymore. I'm
Yeah, it
not
could
sure
be
how he
considered a hate crime.
stands.
And what you mentioned, Alex, has just been so disturbing to me. This man didn't decide he wanted to impersonate women until he was in his early 50s. Up until
Mm-hmm.
then, he had lived as a woman. He had children. He was married. And then he decided he was a woman. And retroactively now, she went to college. She did this. She did that. His entire history has been changed
Mm-hmm.
in order
Yeah.
to affirm him. And yet this is lying. This is not, you know, she isn't a she in the first place. Like Dr. Levine is not a she, and definitely wasn't a she when he went to college as a man, when he got married as a man, when he fathered children as a man. And yet now they talk about Dr. Levine having two children and being a mother and her, and it's just
Ridiculous.
it's so concerning to me that we're willing to sit back and allow history to be rewritten and reality to be completely altered, all because
Yeah.
of the chance that we might hurt somebody's, a certain group's feelings, because apparently it's perfectly okay to hurt other people's feelings, specifically women and girls.
Yeah, and I take issue with all of the crazy so-called women's Jewish organizations who are taking taking Rachel Levine, who's a man, and saying that this is a powerful Jewish woman. What a crock of nonsense! Okay, this is there's, it's so insulting because, you know, there is a wider world of Jewish women who have all kinds of different things which they need to overcome. Potentially, not all of them, but some. There is still issues of underage marriage. There is still issue, if Rachel really was a woman, he wouldn't be able to get a divorce from a husband, right?
He
Because
wouldn't have had a bar
women's,
mitzvah either.
well, the whole thing is utterly ridiculous, and you know, things that women want to get together and discuss. For example, you know, if a woman wants to divorce her husband in a Jewish way, in a kosher way, she'll have to throw him in jail, because women cannot be granted a divorce, right? So all of these organizations coming out and talking about, you know, Rachel, this Jewish woman, I really want to just shake them and say, what is it that you're so afraid of? That you're so afraid of just saying, this is not his experience is not my experience, and he cannot appropriate women, he cannot appropriate lesbian, and he cannot appropriate Jewish. He's
Yes.
living a fake life.
That's the thing that bothers me most, is that he's presenting himself as a lesbian. So he was
So
a happily
stupid.
married heterosexual until his 50s. Now all of a sudden he's a lesbian.
Oh,
It's
wait, wait, wait.
absurd.
I thought you were born that way.
Yeah.
How did
It's so absurd and it's so confounding. And as you said, why are people going along with this? Why are people humoring this? And it's because they're afraid, because we're getting bullied from both ends. We can't say anything to defend ourselves or to point out how absurd this is without
Mm-hmm.
being labeled as transphobic and hateful, without risking physical violence, without risking our jobs.
I heard
Yeah, and
someone say that they think Biden is kind of like your nice old grandpa, that, you know, he really doesn't understand what all this LGBTQ stuff is, but he just wants you to be happy. So whatever.
yeah.
I don't really think that's the case.
If it is the case, he needs to get up to speed really quickly. And he's not going to get up to speed surrounding himself with people like Rachel Levine. I mean,
well, and the fact that he issued this executive order on the very first day of his presidency, I mean, this was already prepared. He didn't write this up the night before. He did a whole, 14 executive orders, and this was in there, and it is pure pandering to a minority who has somehow gotten people under the thumb screws.
The other thing that concerns me so much about having him in charge of our health, this is a guy who's supposed to lead the nation on health issues, and he doesn't even understand basic biology.
Yeah.
And also the meaning of basic biology, right? So gender means nothing, absolutely nothing. It's meaningless. And sex actually does leave a wide variety for presentation, right? Sex actually leaves the door wide open for all different types of women and all different types of men. It's gender that is a stupid box which you can't get out of. You know what I mean? So it's just, I hate it.
Yeah,
I hate it so much.
I'm wearing a hoodie today. I'm wearing a hoodie today.
Oh, you must be in guy mode.
Am I a man? Yeah.
Yeah,
ridiculous.
I mean, and that's the thing that's so insulting, is that somehow by assuming these regressive stereotypes, Richard suddenly becomes Rachel, and everybody's just going to go along with it. And again, I don't know whether or not Richard has had his sex parts removed or not, but it doesn't really matter, because as we mentioned before, sexual predators don't necessarily rely on their sex parts to harm women and girls. But the idea that you can like cut off your sex parts and suddenly be something else is absurd. Does that mean that somebody who had an accident and lost their sex parts becomes the opposite sex? No, it doesn't. And so we're relying either on the idea that our penises and vaginas totally define us as male and female, which we know is not true, or that our hair length and whether we wear makeup and how we dress defines us as male and female. And that's not true. Neither of those propositions is true. In no world is Richard Levine a woman.
Yeah, I also think that it doesn't sit well with me either that, he's been appointed and then a couple of days and maybe even hours later, his big this tweet, his big discussion is not on COVID or, maybe not on, let's say, female genital mutilation. If he's a woman, he should care about that kind of thing. But it's about puberty blockers, a highly contentious, debated, problematic, area of science. And he knows damn well that there was a massive court case in the UK where they determined that children cannot consent to puberty blockers. So of course he is a political figure for his own political movement. I would be very interested to know exactly who he's receiving, funding from, who's speaking in his ear, right? Because it seems to me that it would not make any sense for example, tobacco companies to be speaking in the ear of the health secretary. And the same way, I don't think that pharma companies that have Lupron that they're wanting to give to children and dangerous cross-sex hormones that they want to give to, every non-conforming man, woman, and child in America, don't think they should also have his ear. I'm so incensed, I think, for American women. I think this has been a really dark day. It was a very dark day for you guys. And it has effects, our partnership in International Partners for Ethical Care. We speak to Canadians and we speak to, parents in the UK, parents in Australia. Just today, I spoke to a woman in Australia whose daughter removed her breasts. And all of this starts in America, right? Queer theory started in America. I'm sorry, I hate to tell you guys, but it started in America, and it sort of travels over like a bad, I don't know,
like a virus.
Like a virus.
Yeah. And I think
we have infected the rest of the world with this absurd ideology. And as you said, it's really concerning that one of his first big public posts was not about COVID, was not about the opioid crisis, but was advocating the use of an experimental harmful drug on children who are not old enough to consent and who we know are likely to outgrow their gender identity issues if they're not reinforced in them. This was nothing but a promotion for Big Pharma. And so clearly he's not representing the best interests of Americans. He's not representing our health interests. He's just touting this propaganda for Big Pharma. And apparently so is our new president, which is just discouraging for so many people who had hoped for somebody who would bring sanity to the White House. No, instead, we have somebody who's clearly pandering to Big Pharma and pandering to the LGBT, I should just say to the T interest, because it's not the LGB, because we know that not only does the executive order that Biden issued erase women and girls protections and rights, it also undermines the LGB protections, because Rachel, aka Richard, now gets to say he's a lesbian.
Yeah, and just look at actual American women who do speak out. Julia Beck, for example, was speaking out about how she was, thrown out of her LGBT organization. So it is not a movement. It's not a movement for gays and lesbians. It's a movement for the pharmaceutical industry and for these crazy trans rights activists who just seem to have a very, the more I think something can't possibly happen, like it could never happen that males could be with females in prisons. It happens. I would be really interested to know, because obviously women's sports has been destroyed overnight. Okay, fine. Women are going to have to find women are just going to have to find other ways to excel. But let's say a woman does get locked up. Is she going to be locked up with men? Or is she going to be locked up with women?
I do think she's going to be locked up with men. And I was just incensed. I was watching a documentary about these men in prison who identify as women. And one of them was talking about how horrible it is having to be in the male prison. And you know how he got in the male prison? He was stealing things from women because he wanted them. He wanted their stuff. So he stole from them. And now he's going to be put in the women's prison because of this executive order that allows him to say, I feel like a woman, therefore I am a woman.
I've been incarcerated for 30 years now, and I prefer to be in a woman's prison because I look at myself as a transgender woman, and I should be treated as a woman.
Yeah,
it really makes me sick.
It really makes me very sick as well. And there's so much to be said as well for sex segregated spaces and the need for them. Okay, just an example from my own life. I remember speaking to a domestic abuse victim who she would only speak to me if I would cover her head with a scarf and hide her face. Could you imagine if we were to put her into a situation with men? She wouldn't even speak to me, so terrified. And by the way, she's not a special case. That's very, very standard. Same goes with rape shelters. Same goes with any place where women are vulnerable and at risk. We are putting not only men, okay, we're putting the most perverted men. Men with very weird sexual fantasies and proclivities, autogynephiles, we're lumping them in as well. And there's no need to even prove that you're one of these, genuine, genuine rare cases of trapped in the wrong body. You can just rock up. I think it's totally self-ID as well. So, America has gone far, far further than the UK did. In the UK, the Gender Recognition Act was hashed out for 2 years and it was still not passed. And it just seems overnight you've had a Gender Recognition Act and a repeal of the Civil Rights Act as well.
And Title IX. Title IX has basically been obliterated.
Well, and for Biden coming in and saying that he wants to be a unifier and he wants to bring us together and he wants to reunite the country, to do this to women and children on his first day in office belies that desire to be a unifier. He doesn't care about women and children. He just threw us under the bus.
Yeah, and that's what really is frustrating to me, is that I'm hearing people say, well, it's just this one issue, girls, just buck up and deal with it because we have President Biden now. And that is so offensive. That is so offensive. It's basically saying, hey, girls, just deal with the fact that your rights and protections were taken away. It's okay. Men can bully you. Men can come into your safe spaces now. Not only that, but we're going to have a man telling kids to take puberty blockers and damage their healthy bodies. And as mothers and women, we can't stand up for our children anymore. That's not just a little issue. This is profound. And I remember when Trump was elected and we had the trans rights people who were just freaking out saying that trans people were going to be erased. Well, guess what? They were not erased. They were emboldened, and they are so emboldened that they're perfectly comfortable erasing lesbians, gays, women, and children.
And also, women is not a political movement. That, you know, we are 50% of the population of the planet. We are not just some kind of, you know, political party or force. We're a sex class. So to say that the women are angry is actually pretty massive, a pretty massive thing, because you'd have to be, I think, completely just lying or indoctrinated. If you were the woman, the girl who is 17 and has practiced track and field every day after school and every weekend, and to lose it to a man, to lose it to a male, and then you don't get your place in college, it's just unthinkable. Why? It's so unnecessary. It's just, we need something.
Yeah, why? Why?
Who benefits from that?
Yeah, and we have to ask that, because that's the only way we're going to get to the truth of that there's somebody making a whole lot of money off of this, and then we have politicians who are willing to throw us under the bus in order to placate and to pander to those interests, and it's disgusting.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm so people are saying, okay, it's just sport, who cares? It's like, no, it's not sport. It's prisons, it's rape shelters, it's bathrooms where we just want to, you know, we actually just don't want the presence of men. Also, we deserve the right, I believe, as females, and males deserve this as well, to decide to have an organization that's just about us, just to talk about whatever, fertility, women who are pregnant, women who can't get pregnant, women who want to talk about
breast
being a
cancer,
woman,
all
whatever.
these, what it's like
and
to menstruate. I mean, these are things that are just women's experiences that are being appropriated by men. And it was really interesting. Somebody sent me a screenshot of something, and it was basically a picture of Dr. Levine, and it said something about him wanting to make people who hostily misgender others a mental illness. And I had to actually do some research to find out whether or not this is true, because things are so crazy that I was like, well, it could be. And if it's not today, it could be tomorrow. And I think it was a joke. I think it was satire, but it's so hard to tell anymore. And the fact is that they are pushing their agenda so hard that even us making this video puts at us risk of losing our,
yes,
that many people are losing their Facebook accounts, that people are getting blocked from Twitter simply for standing up and saying, enough already. Women and children do matter. Biology matters. Reality matters. When they start wanting to damage and medicalize our children, when they take away our rights, and put us in situations where we're vulnerable, and then tell us to shut up because we're speaking hate speech, we're not even allowed to defend our rights, then that's just not okay. It's not acceptable. And I'm not willing to advocate for transgender rights if their rights mean they're taking away our protections and rights.
And Erin, you had an experience of a man walking in the bathroom on you, didn't you?
I did. And it was extremely uncomfortable. And again, I keep hearing people say they just want to pee. And unless you're like looking under the stall or looking through the stall, you won't even know. Well, the fact is first of all, we do a whole lot of other things in the bathroom besides peeing. And I happened to be in there in a state of undress when a man walked in. It was at the Capitol, the state capital of Utah. And I went out and I told someone, and I said, I don't know what to do. I'm not even allowed to complain about this. And that my consent has been taken away. My consent has been taken away. And now we're telling children, that little girl who was also in Utah, who had a boy walk into her bathroom yesterday, her consent is taken away. She is being told that she no longer has the opportunity or right to consent to who is in her spaces, who sees her naked, who's in there when she's using the bathroom and doing other things that women do in bathrooms.
I think that the vast majority of people, men included, don't want to go along with this at all and actually find this whole thing to be really disgusting and quite an affront. I think that we cannot tell a specific section of men no. That's what I think it boils down to. That there is a class of men who are so, protected in every situation, and those are the men that we cannot say no to, and that's what I really, and also men can't say no to them either.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? We have already very disgusting articles being published about how men have to relearn heterosexuality to accommodate sorry, it's too funny, to accommodate so-called trans women. And so I think that there's
that's what I
sorry.
mean, that I couldn't tell if that article was made up, because things are so insane now.
No, it's not.
That heterosexual men are now told that they're haters and bigots and potentially even Nazis if they don't want to have sex with a man.
Yeah. Well, it's
Right.
the thing that they tell lesbians, right? That if a lesbian
Yes.
wants to date a so-called trans woman, she's being homophobic. I mean, how ridiculous is that?
They call it the cotton ceiling, and it's so disgusting. And and it's not just a concept. You know what I'm saying? It's not just this thing that people talk about. It's targeted, hateful abuse. If a woman is to say, on her Tinder profile, no males, she'll be potentially kicked off. So this thing about the cotton ceiling, it really does exist, and it is absolutely revolting. I mean, just to the idea of, we want to protect women from any unwanted attention. And so you have women who are, they're signaling to the world that they're not interested in men. And we have tech companies and a whole bunch of other people, supporting, saying, rethink that. It's just, I cannot tell you how much I hate it. It's so gross.
So as we're talking here, it's very clear this is not just one issue. There are so many issues that are involved with this that have been signaled. That it was one of the most difficult weeks I've had, just this, because it was just like bang, bang, bang. The first thing, the White House puts out a new form that has gender, where you could use gender markers. Woohoo! Yeah, everybody's excited because now we can pretend like we get to choose whether we're he or she or they or them or z or they or whatever absurd pronoun you want to choose. We're going to humor that absurdity. And then he announced the nomination of Richard Levine to be the health secretary. And then we had the executive order. And then we had the CNN article in which puberty blockers were being touted as akin to being a cure for cancer, which is just absurd. And this is just within the first couple of days. I can't even imagine where we're headed.
I think more than ever, it's going to be groups like Partners for Ethical Care that are going to be actually a center for truth and a center for honesty and beacon of hope. Okay, I understand that we are not taking on the whole women's issue, right? That's not us. We're focusing on the kids. And I think that that's the best place to start, because if you're in a burning building, and I say that in terms of the Western world, we are in a burning building, we have to save the kids first. And that's why at Partners for Ethical Care, we are totally dedicated to avoiding the medicalization of young people who are unable to consent, and in many ways are unable to resist what's coming at them through the media. I don't think kids have a chance, actually. If you're a kid and maybe something feels wrong with you, I don't think that you have the ability even to overpower these messages that are being sent out. So
because
that's
you're being
why it's
told
so
at a very young age These children are being taught at kindergarten that they don't have a right to consent anymore, and their entire reality is being confused. And so, as you said, Alex, these kids, they need us to stand up for them because they're not in a position to stand up for themselves, and they are under attack from so many different so many different ways.
Well, and Erin
Yeah.
and we're doing a video series on parenting through this issue and how to save your kids. And some of the comments that we get are just hideous, calling us awful names. Why? Because we're saying that you can parent your child without medicalization. You can get your child through this without medicalization. And that's what we're being attacked for. And when somebody starts screaming foul, you know you've hit the right question. You know you've hit the right answer. You know that you're on the right track with this.
Yeah, it's
So we
really
just
fantastic.
have to insist that puberty blockers are not an option. You know, there's actually a group of people who have been on puberty blockers, not to block puberty, but for other issues, because they were originally developed for cancers. Well, they were originally used to chemically castrate sex offenders. Then they've been used for different cancers. People who have used them report outrageously bad side effects, just horrendous lifelong side effects. These are not benign treatments. They're incredibly difficult treatments.
No, it's
They're damaging our children.
I mean, it's brittle bones and organ damage and heart failure. And so,
Inducing a developmental delay. I mean, basically what you're doing is inducing a developmental delay.
It stops the brain developing.
Right.
Yeah,
And then
and
it also,
social development.
as we know, it also leads to cross-sex hormones, which are incredibly problematic. That leads to infertility. That leads to lifelong medicalization. Once the gonads stop creating the sex hormone that is appropriate for the body, that child is going to have to be on hormones for the rest of their life, whether or not they decide to whether or not they resolve their gender identity issues or not. So this is the crux of it that Partners for Ethical Care is really focused on, is that all these other things are actually enabling the medicalization of children. And that's why we're concerned about them. But ultimately, it is saving our children that we are focused on.
And something I've been hearing all week is actually from many, many different people across the world is the despair and the whole, I don't know what to do. Okay, so we're telling you what to do. Come to Partners for Ethical Care, write to us. We would love to have some more volunteers with us. We would love to have, support in any way. So if you are sitting at home and you're just thinking, I don't know what to do, it's overpowering, we're telling you what to do. You can come to us. There is actually a way to fight back on this. And we want to very much be at the forefront of that, guarding these children against harmful medical interventions.